Our mission here at the Bowdoin Museum is to cultivate and encourage human connection across place, time, and cultures. We would like to welcome you all. And here at the museum, we are in the homeland of the Penobscot Nation and their Wabanaki relations. We encourage those of you who are joining us virtually to learn more about the Indigenous people who call where you live home. We're really excited about this program, about the Bowdoin, and as part of the museum series, Connecting to Collections, Curiosity, Culture, and Climate, made possible through the generous support of Bankers Savings Bank. And then I'm going to hand it over to Captain Alex Peacock, and he will introduce himself and the Bowdoin crew.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me all right? Well, thank you for being here. My name is Captain Alex Peacock. I am lucky to be the newest captain of Bowdoin, but also I feel honored that I've also taken her up on the ice since starting at the Maine Maritime Academy. So really special time. And I'd like to introduce my crew. We'd like to keep this interactive, so we're going to go through a series of slides. If any questions come up, please feel free to ask them. We can open up for questions after the slides as well. But I'd like to introduce the crew of the Bowdoin. They happen to also be enrolled at Maine Maritime Academy as students. But we have David Stoles here, Chief Mate. Next to him, we have Blake Birch. And then we have Megan Leach, we have Landon Parks, and Robbie Miller. And there's a few others, especially we had two Bowdoin college students on board as well that joined us. We had the space, we had 8 students total, and it was a really great dynamic, I think a special one, and it keeps in tradition with what Don McMillan was doing with his voyages north. So let's see, where do we start? So 15 years ago was the last time Bowdoin was north in the ice, and that was under the command of Rick Miller, who took her to the Arctic via Labrador. I think they went up to Cartwright, and Andy, you can feel free to correct me, but they went up to Cartwright and exchanged hands there with other captain, and then they went over across to Greenland and went as far north as Disco Bay. That is what we're hoping to do next year, and go as far north as we possibly can in the time we can. Elliot Rappaport, captain, was longest standing captain other than Don McMillan, 1994, brought the ship up to Disco Bay, in the northern part of Disco Bay. It was actually the northernmost point that she had been since being here at the academy. He still holds that. And that's like 77 something degrees north. And they kind of stopped because the charting was getting a bit slim and the ice was starting to get thicker. So get these slides going here. We set out to voyage all the way as far north as Maine, which is about halfway up the Labrador coast, and the eastern side, which is about 600 miles in length. Labrador coast is about 800 miles altogether, including the southern part, which is in Belle Isle Strait. Maine is also the last civilized community that far north in Maine. However, we did not make it that far. And it's not because we ran out of time, it's because of the ice. And you'll see that depicted here in the slides. And that's what we set out to do, go as far north as we can and learn a little something along the way. And also our crew is going to comment. I might have taken a couple of these pictures, but these are all pictures the crew took. And I'm drawing a blank on the name of the photographer and botanist who was on McMillan's last trip. But we also, one of the Bowdoin students was trying to recreate all those photos that he took, getting the height right, the light right, the angle, everything. She was really into it, and we look forward to seeing those slides when she gets back from Africa. So, okay, here we go. So this just depicts basically our trip, and I apologize about the top bar there. I don't know how we get rid of that. But we made it up just around the corner there, about 3 nautical miles north of Cartwright, which was the first Inuit community on the eastern coast of Labrador. We left Booth Bay, Maine, like traditionally Don McMillan would do, other than Wiscasset, but he left from Booth Bay many times, about 2 piers down from where they originally left from, but it was pretty special, and we had a great gathering there and a great send-off and a stiff breeze to send us out, which is really nice. So we started Booth Bay, we made our way to Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, And that's where we cleared customs, saw our friends in the Blue Nose too, and then carried on up through the Labrador Lakes, which is a really beautiful area. You go through the St. Peter Lock, which you'll see here in this one of the next slides. That's also where John McMillan's father was from. So it's kind of a special place as well. And that's where John McMillan's first voyage was to. And I think the last place he saw his father before he was lost at sea on a fishing schooner. So from there, we actually turned the corner in Cape Breton, went and fueled up in Sydney. Met a lovely bunch of fishermen there who tossed over, I don't know how many pound box that was, but a lot of shrimp. So we had shrimp pretty much all the way north and some of the way back. From there, we made the long run up to our first stop in Newfoundland, which was Port Saunders, and that's right up on that northern tip there. I had to skip Bay of Islands, which I really wanted to explore, and it's a really beautiful area, so I'm told. But we had to take the weather window and make way north while we could. From there, we crossed over the Belle Isle Strait, which is between Newfoundland and Labrador coast there, and went into Red Bay, which was our first stop in Labrador. That's an old Basque whaling village, historic UNESCO historic site, and a cool little spot. And that's where we first really started to see ice, was in the Belle Isle Strait, but especially in Red Bay. And that was that was a cool spot. That's when we kind of started to realize, okay, this is for real. And then carried on up the Labrador coast, and we'll talk about those stops as we move forward. As we came down, we had a little bit more time to explore Newfoundland because we didn't make it as far north as we wanted to. So we stopped in various places that we wanted to, that were historic to Bowdoin, and just good places that we couldn't pass up. And we did have to pass up a lot of things we wanted to see, but that's how it goes, weather and time. This is preparations. So these are all of our paper charts. I'm not going to say the dollar number on charts we had to buy, but it's quite a bit. And so this is getting them organized. It's Megan and Lily, and they're cataloging them all. So we have them nice in order, and we can just open up the drawer, and as we move north, pull them out. Yard period, we're doing a fairly extensive but quick yard period. This is basically a shave and a haircut, as we say in the industry, where you paint the bottom, paint the top sides, do a general inspection of the hull. We actually did our hull inspection too, so we pull the through holes. Coast Guard comes and does that and signs us off. And that's launching. And this is, we got 2 crew members on the main, 2 on the fore there, and this is the upgrade. So this is what happens behind the scenes. So we're starting to hang blocks and run lines such as scantlings, so on. Safety, that's number 1. So these are immersion suits that they're donning, and it's nice and hot in the basin, so this is a perfect place to do it in. Goodbyes. So this is actually in Booth Bay. So these are the faces of the families and some of our crew members. That's actually Tyler Jupp, who was our engineer, 3rd mate on the voyage. Last muster before we leave. And that's our departure photo. Tim Hodgson, Hodgson Brothers was there. They built Bowdoin in 1921, 7th generation. And there's quite a crowd on the dock, and the local news was there as well. Outbound, so we're actually wing on wing with our fore out to starboard and our staysail out to port, heading pretty much dead downwind. It was about 18, gusting 20, nice good breeze to push us along towards Lunenburg, and that's where we are. And Lunenburg's always been a favorite stop of mine, so any excuse to go there, I take. We're actually going to be going into Shelburne to clear customs, but because of the forest fires, not because Shelburne particularly was on fire, but that's where they staged all the efforts to bunker on the water and go put out the fires in Shelburne County and surrounding area. So we diverted to Lunenburg, which wasn't a hard decision to make. They got the famous dory shop there. So if you're ever coming into Lunenburg, you got to watch out for this. It's a narrow channel, but as you come out, dories will start firing out like they're attacking you. So that was a little bit of a surprise for the crew, but kind of fun. And that's Blue Nose 2 right there. Yeah. 2.0. That's outbound Lunenburg. Got our new Southwesters on, hats. That's St. Peter's Lock. So this is the lock that lets you into the Labrador Lakes. If you're over, it's about 88 feet clearance with the power lines there. So if you're over 88 feet, you don't want to be going into the Labrador Lakes. You can go the other way you can enter into the east, and that's what the Blue Nose 2 has to do when they go into the lakes. Oh, there's Robbie. Yeah. See lots of happy faces, lots of enthusiasm, but there's unknowns ahead. This is Bedeck, nice little lovely town. Stop there. And again, we were just trying to chase McMillan's footsteps, Andy Chase's footsteps, Eric's trying to keep the legacy going, see the same places, but also find some new places as well. But good common stop so we can keep relationships current as well. The 3 fishermen on the dock in Sydney. This one's out of order, but they tossed us the box of shrimp. This is sailing into Fort Saunders. We had a lovely sail. I think we laid about 14 tacks. Almost sailed onto the dock, but there was quite a crosswind running, so we sent lines. But we also had a greeting party there. They saw us coming. These are some locals. This is actually the fellow on the right is actually the nephew of the fellow on the left. And the fellow on the left, they were both born and raised there. The fellow on the left, and he went and settled in St. John's, Newfoundland, and became a businessman. He sold fishes on his brother's license, and vice versa. These are kind of the first icebergs we saw. This is just in between Belle Isle Strait there. And it's hard to get a perspective here, but they're quite large, and when they're on the horizon or more than 3 miles out, it's hard to tell how big or how small or what shape they are really because of the refraction and the light. This I found was kind of interesting. We were pretty much chasing this buoy tender, which is also an icebreaker north. So they were laying the buoys in some of the harbors that we were going into ahead of us because they're waiting for the same window. I mean, they can go into more ice, but the ice was receding at this point. So they were going to set the markers, which are few and far between. This is Red Bay. You pretty much just pull up to these docks. Nobody bothers you. You just find a nice big secure bulkhead like this. And even in the remote ports, they keep a lot of these docks in good condition to have a safe haven for the fishing fleet still, which is a nice thing to do. This picture was sent to me 4 days before we went to Battle Harbor, and if you look here beyond the dock, that's all ice. It was completely blocked off, and the only reason there's not ice right in the forefront area here is kind of see off to the left. There's a couple buoys. They strung up several lines just to keep the ice from totally infiltrating and protect their small boats. But it clears fast. You just need 24 hours of a change of wind. The Labrador current's always moving it. So when that wind shifts, things change overnight, and that's what we were banking on. A lovely view from Red Bay. Looking out, these are icebergs. It's kind of hard to see in the slide, but off in the horizon, just massive, massive icebergs. Going to take a closer look, you can see the beautiful blue in the ice. Really cool. So that one probably recently capsized and the smooth underside. Then they go around and they stay there as they slowly melt. A lot of dilapidated buildings like this. Some of them are quite old, but that's in Battle Harbor. And this is the other side from where the little village part is. And they later on we dropped them off there and they hiked up the hill to take some photos down on us, and you'll see those. This is them going on their little excursion. There's a boat in alongside, and that's quite a lovely place if you haven't been. You get on a ferry in Mary's Harbor, which is about 10 miles west, and that's where you get fuel, and there's a whole fishing operation there, freezing. They actually recently opened up a cod factory there too. They're going to try cod again, see if they can make it work sustainably. Cool picture looking down at Bowdoin. So Battle Harbor is significant. This is where in 1908, Perry announced that he reached the North Pole, and Don McMillan was in the same room. I think it was this building. Yep, it was right up here in this building that the Radio Shack was in, that they transmitted directly back to Washington, D.C. And there's a picture up in there, and McMillan He's sitting there by his side. That's our shore party going up, and this is part of the recreating of the photos, the historic photos. It's a really cool spot, and they get a lot of people that come here just vacation. They spend a couple of weeks just living in these little cottages. They have a little pub there too, and there's a ferry that runs service every day. There's no roads that go to Battle Harbor.
It doesn't look like there are any telephone poles. Is everything kerosene or?
No, they generator,
Generator?
yeah, which they were having a lot of fun with, keeping it running. Oh yeah, the crab. We got, geez, that was 12 pounds of crab and probably about $700 US worth. And that was just tossed to us when we went to Mary's Harbor to fuel up as we continued north. So that was quite a treat, a lot of work. So this gentleman, this is alongside of Mary's Harbor. He was 96 years old, is 96 years old. And he was very hard to understand because of his accent. So we had a translator that was helping along with the stories. But he remembers seeing Bowdoin when she was painted gray. That's during World War II. And she was right there at that dock. And he had a couple stories to tell, but we at least got that part, that he saw Bowdoin when she was gray. And that was a really cool fact. And it was really unique to meet him as well. You know, we're getting, this is up in Hawk Harbor. This is an old whaling village. And if you ever seen, there's a video, Points North, I think it's called. And it's McMillan and Miriam, his wife, they did all this filming as they went up the coast, and they went to this harbor when it was still a working whaling village and showed their students that were on board at the time. Pretty gruesome, must have been a pretty rough scene. But a lot of the rusted relics are still standing, and you can kind of get the idea. There's a lot of winches, a lot of cables still lying around, even harpoon tips. There's two old whaling ships, which they call the pillar boats, and it's quite intimidating. Kind of a little bit of a darkness, but it's a beautiful spot. So a little bit of light in that darkness. This is one of those boats, and they had these on the bow. They have a big harpoon gun up there. There's our cook doing a traditional Inuit art piece here. Basically, it's pulling thread and making particular designs, and they would not let anything go to waste. So old socks that weren't useful anymore, they'd use the yarn from that to scrap, kind of a fun little thing, and it kept her sane for the most part. Now we're starting to get a little chilly here, so we're starting to see some more layers. This is in Cartwright. And this was cool. We actually met a bunch of Inuit youth and let them aboard and explore the boat. I really had no parents to talk to, so I didn't know about sharing pictures, but we were able to get them running around the deck, and it was cool. And hopefully when we go back, they're a little older and they recognize the ship and they have stories to tell. And this is what I'm talking about, keeping the legacy looking forward. But Cartwright's cool. It's quite exposed in there. There's a lot of fetch. You know, you start to tuck into these harbors and it can be pretty calm outside, but the wind starts to pick in just coming off the hills. Not like in a fjord where you can really get beset by some strong winds coming off the hills, but it's still always pretty breezy. And we actually had to leave in the middle of the night because we were getting blown on pretty hard. And that was a good time. Just kind of a vision of the town. There's not a lot. This is a town with a population of about 500, so it gives you an idea. There is a road to Cartwright that was completed in 2021, and it's a long road. It's isolated, but they have access to trucks now. I see some cool pictures of icebergs. Get the archway. I feel like that's such a classic iceberg look with the archway there. And every now and then you get to see one flip over, or a whole side would slab off. And the thing about being in the ice is everything's really quiet except for the icebergs. You can kind of hear them creaking and cracking. And then all of a sudden one will flip over, or a big piece will break off, and it'll pretty much startle everybody on the deck, which is kind of funny. So you can see this one actually, just that whole edge just let go. And you can kind of see all the smaller bits just below it. This is why you don't go to leeward of, or downwind of an iceberg, because that's where you get all the little bits that are falling off it. So you always want to go ahead of them. These monsters are pretty cool. Robbie, I think you took this picture. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Alex,
Hmm.
sorry to interrupt the question. Are those, you were talking about they get smooth after they're smoother when they flip over, so these have not yet flipped over, is that?
Yeah, I don't, these do not look like they flipped over, and a lot of these icebergs are coming from Greenland, and they come into the Belle Isle Strait. A lot of them ground on the northeast side of Newfoundland, but they end up coming. You know, some of them come to the Labrador coast, but they were probably much bigger pieces. And by the time, you know, those two could have been joined at one time. They're clearly aground in this picture. You know, we could tell that just by, you know, where they were and the depth of the water and seeing them. So yeah, these ones have not flipped over yet, or they did flip over a while ago and then they started splitting up again. It makes it kind of look like a newer, fresh piece of ice. Really smooth. So a lot of, you know, get a lot of layers of new ice, which is kind of the, you know, looks like ice we're used to, white, fluffy, a lot of air in it. But below that, you would see the old ice, and that's where you get the real blues, the hard, dense, dark pieces of ice, and that's very old ice. So at this point, this is the day, the morning, I woke up thinking we're gonna have a full day headed north. We know there's ice, we're looking at the ice charts, but we're pretty confident we might find a lead through there until, I don't know, I forget the timing on this, but it was about 2 hours into the day. I was asleep, and I believe you woke me up and said, I think there's a wall of ice ahead of us. And it was one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. We sailed full sail right up to the edge of it, and we just ran down as far as we could looking for a lead, and it felt like it had been 200 years ago, like our lives depended on it, you know, but we had the option to turn around. We eventually struck sail. We found an area that seemed like we could get through, or at least we we're going to try. So you can start to see this is the area. This is about 3/10 coverage. It's a mix of new and old ice, and the old ice is really hard. You can get away with hitting the newer ice; it will split up. And McMillan was famous for plowing right through it. He knew exactly what he was looking at and just went full ahead. But you wouldn't want to hit an old piece of ice. One, because there's a lot of it below the water, but it's very hard. We don't have that traditional sheathing. It's about 2.5 feet above and below the water line of Greenheart that they had too. So, you know, it's just not the game we're playing anymore. We're going to check it out, but we don't need to be breaking through it. It's really surreal, and it's a eerie feeling. It can be a little bit intimidating. You know, you're in a new place. It's the quietness, the stillness, and it's just a field of ice that looks like it could go on forever. And you don't know how it's going to change. The ice charts are great, but they're not a rough idea. And where we are in relation to the satellite imagery, it pretty much stops where we are. So we're not getting the benefit of the ice charts being corrected with satellite imagery until you really get north of Cartwright.
Are those birds or anything in there? Or is it-
These right here,
Yeah.
those are all just small ice cubes,
Oh.
little bits of ice.
Cap, if I can add
Yeah.
just a touch.
Come on up.
This turned into just want to throw a little bit of a first person perspective in as the captain, you know, you are looking up whenever anything like this occurs, right? But as just a deckhand, you know, you go down to sleep and then you come back up on deck for watch and you're in the middle of fog. There is ice everywhere, and you know that might be what you're experiencing for 4 hours, and then you know to go back to bed, you know, and then to wake up, you know, 8 hours later for watch or for dinner or whatever it is, and to come back up and it's still foggy and there's still ice everywhere, and you know you've got another 4 hours of navigating. You know, we're not hitting any of this, right? So when you're on the bow, you're like, okay, like there's ice here and here and here. it is 4 hours of being on and concentrating and, you know, trying to take in this beautiful, not vast, very, very small sphere of what you can see through the fog, you know, but there's hours of it out there. And so that was as a crew member, that was a really cool experience to, you know, to step onto deck for a 4 hour period of time. And this is your world. This is as much as you can see, and this is what you have to get through. And so that was a really cool experience. Definitely a little taxing, a little tiring. But I just wanted to add that as a perspective.
Thank you, perfect. Yeah, it is, as Megan said, it is quite exhausting. You're on, you're fully attentive. It's like if you're in the fog and you're looking for traffic, but now you're in fog and ice and it's everywhere. You can pick up, the radar does a great job, but at this point, you know, it's visual navigation. I remember Robbie at one point turns around because whoever's on bow watch and aloft or wherever looking for ice, we're all working together to find the leads through the ice, and it's changing too. And at one point, he just looks back like deer in headlights. He didn't know what to say. It was just everywhere. But a lot of maneuvering, and that's what's so special and unique about Bowdoin. She's got a large rudder. She's very maneuverable. But beyond that, it was on the helmsman, right? Blake? So it's a lot of hard to ports, hard to starboards, or one turn, shift your helm. It's a lot of maneuvering. And at this point, I'm pretty much on the cabin housetop.
So how much of this are you doing under sail versus under engine?
Yeah, good question. At this point, nothing's under sail. Yeah, it's all, you know, we skirted the edge of the ice field under sail, which was really cool. And we were still, you know, avoiding some birdie bits and birds, but yeah, this could not be done under sail. You'd be plowing into some ice at some point.
What was the date we're looking at here?
Yeah, so this would have been. Let's talk about the log. This would have been, trying to remember when we were Cartwright, June. What's that?
24th, 22nd.
Yes, that is
Just
20.
a couple days before I turn around.
Yeah. So a bit early. Yeah.
And hours of daylight at that point?
Yeah, we're getting good 9-10 hours of daylight at that point, and then you know twilight was great. You have good visibility. You could make long days. My problem was fatigue and navigating in ice like this all day and then into the night. That's taxing, and we'll actually get into that later on. But yeah, it really becomes what are you capable of doing with your resources on board, and yeah.
Animals on the ice?
What's that?
Animals?
Seals. Yep. We saw plenty of seals on the ice, and they'd see us and then they'd flop in the water, and they're pretty goofy, especially when they're not swimming. They're pretty awkward. But yeah, there's quite a few seals, and they have, I think they roughly counted on 2 million gray seals, and that's just one species out of, I think, 5 or 6.
And how much fuel do you carry and how long does it last?
About 420 gallons. And so if we're just cruising, and we can cruise at comfortably at about 1,000 RPMs to 1,200 RPMs, that's like 2.5 gallons an hour. So we have quite a large range. If we start getting about 1,500 RPMs, we're burning about 4 gallons an hour. And if we're fighting any current or wind. So we topped up fuel at any time we could, but yeah, we had quite a good range. This is, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, but this is when it started to get thicker, meaning I think we're getting a bit more than 3/10 ice coverage, and we're starting to think about plan B, which is turning around. So this is our track. So this is basically coming out of Cartwright here, going north, and that northernmost tip, that's where we turned around. So that's our furthest point north. And at this point, I was pretty tired, so I said, I need some sleep. We could try this again in the morning or even later on today, which we almost did. So we anchored just below Cape Porcupine there. You can see that black and yellow dot. We anchored there for about 4 hours. I got 2 hours of sleep. Woke up, the icebergs that were around us were now gone. And I turn around and the entire ice field that we were just in was now behind us. So we knew it was moving, but it was moving a bit faster. It moves about 12 miles a day, some less than that, but this southern portion is breaking up and melting is moving a lot quicker and with that Labrador current. So I consulted in Canadian Ice Service, the Coast Guard. I called a good friend of mine who ships out on tankers that go north into the Arctic, and he's looking at his regular updates that they get. They get hourly ice updates, which is pretty cool. And he's like, yeah, you might want to think about leaving in the morning. And I was thinking about it while I was on the phone. I said, I think we got to go now. And we did, and we fought our way through that ice field again for into nighttime. And it was fog rolled in thick. It was a pretty exciting day and night. But we went back and found a safe anchorage. We were confident it would be a lead from the wind and the ice. And we had Cartwright 12 miles away that we could get to. But at this point, I pretty well knew. I don't know if I announced it, but that was kind of it. And we were now southbound. So this is sailing south. We had a lot of great sailing days, just like this one, you know, boating in our element. This is heading back down the coast, and we're actually headed towards an area called the Punch Bowl, which is literally just a bowl. It's a little harbor. It's an old fishing village. Lots of derelict shacks still remaining, and but a perfectly good dock to tie up to. So this is the entrance into the Punch Bowl, and Andy can tell pretty exciting stories about the Punch Bowl, but our experience was about 30 knots, sustained gusting over and motoring through, thinking the bow was going to go around on this side and the stern was going to go around on that side. And the helmsman was pretty wide-eyed, but he saw when I cracked the seltzer water, I had it under control. And then for the next 2 days, it flew about 40 knots. Yeah, it was pretty windy. Entrance.
When it's going 40 knots, what kind of sail do you put up?
Oh, if we were out sailing, it depends on sea state as well, but at that point, we would be under a storm trysail. Maybe a reef forward, just a full fore and a staysail. Yeah, just keeping the boat comfortable.
You're motor sailing or?
No, probably not. Yeah, again, it really depends on the sea state. If we're going into a head sea, we wouldn't want to set any more sails. We might have to motor sail to keep the boat moving, but generally not. We'll just keep going. So that's looking into the Punch Bowl. Again, that's you can see boat at the dock there. There's a nice little basin you can pull into there. It shallows up pretty quickly, so we weren't going to attempt it. And the wind was blowing right down the bow, so we were actually quite comfortable, and there was no significant chop or anything that we had to worry about. But you read old cruising guides about the Punch Bowl, and people are commenting, you wouldn't want to go during the day. It's so loud, it's so noisy. There's boats everywhere. You know, it's all these fishermen that would go there for the summers, and they'd fish all summer. There was a little outpost there. You could go and buy supplies. So it was quite an active area. Now there's not a thing going on. We did find a little, one of the shacks, a little, like a hunter's camera, a motion activated camera. And we actually put it into our camera to see the slide, and saw some snowmobilers going by, and the snow was still on the ground, and a caribou. And us. But yeah, that was probably one of my favorite spots. It was really cool to explore, and everything. You go to these shacks and everything's from the 90s, 80s, little washing machines, diesel heaters. It's all still there. Built Karen, put a bunch of stuff into it. Hopefully it'll be there when we go back someday, or somebody else will find it. This is right on the edge of the entrance that's coming in, and the crew members put various things in there. We put that flag in there and a notebook with a few things we had to say. And I think at this point, everybody was relieved that we were starting to head south, but there was still a little bit of disappointment. So at that point, we had made our way back to Newfoundland, and we had a really fast sail back. So we didn't really need to stop anywhere else in Labrador. We headed right for Lansing Meadows. This is the original Norse settlement, discovered about 1,000 years ago. And we went in pea soup fog, no idea what was around us. The fog lifted, and that was a spooky scene. You know, you're seeing whale bones cross at the head of these little buildings, and it's a Norse settlement, reenacted settlement. So it had a spooky look to it, and the crew all ventured ashore to check that out. This was pretty funny. They talked about they had two sheep. They had a black and white sheep. They hadn't seen them for a few days, but they're like, yeah, we don't bother chasing them because the more you chase them, the further they go. But we left again in the fog. But as we were rounding the corner to leave, the fog broke out a little bit just on the hillside, and there was the black and white sheep just having a vacation. Pretty funny. This was cool. This is entering St. Anthony, and this was after a really long day in the fog. We had more fog than you can imagine. It's thicker in Maine, I believe, but still a lot of days in the fog. I was relieved to be pretty much out of the ice at this point because that just adds a whole other element to it. But we're coming in, we have our fog signal on, you hear the fog signal of the lighthouse, and all of a sudden, it's like entering a room. The fog cleared, and it's this beautiful summer's day with people running around in the park and the smell of pine, and just a really special moment. We were back around trees, things like that. It was pretty cool. You don't realize how much you appreciate these things until you're out of them. This was cool. We took a little detour. This is coming down the northern peninsula of Newfoundland. And these are bird sanctuaries really for puffins. And I just wanted to we didn't really see any fjords. This is the closest thing we could find. So we just wanted to get a close look of the steep hills, and that was pretty cool. We had a little bit of time to throw around. Here's a puffin. Yeah. Robbie took this picture, and they're really small. They're pretty funny, and they're not good swimmers. They're a bit bow heavy in the water, and they skip along until they gain flight. But a lot of puffins, transiting back and forth. There's Megan. This is coming into Twillingate, where we saw some of the most spectacular icebergs of our trip, I'd say. Mostly the color and the size, but we're short tacking all the way up into the harbor. We're gonna spend a couple of days here. The cool part about this was Captain Will McLean, who I took over Bowdoin from, was here on vacation with one of our other captains, Ben Welch, and Ben texts me, says, "Is that you sailing out there?" And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "Okay, Will didn't think it was you guys, he didn't believe me." And sure enough, we got closer, and they got a lot of great pictures of us coming in. And we knew they were going to be in the area, but we hadn't really communicated, so it was really cool that they happened to be out there and see us coming in, just kind of at it from around the corner. Sailing in. That's a great picture taken by a local who came up to us, and he was on his way north on his little boat solo, and came by. Really cool. This is really the only picture I have about St. John's, because that's all we saw of it. Came in the fog, we left in the fog, and but a lovely port, historic. We had a good time there, and met a lot of friends and people that knew the Bowdoin, so I look forward to going back there and spending more time. This is back in MDI. We're clearing customs. We're anxious. You can see the faces. Nobody's really ready to be back yet. I think I can speak for everybody, right?
Still not ready.
And that's our arrival photo. Still smiling. Yeah, I don't know. I see a little bit more confidence in their faces.
You count the same number there?
Yeah, we got the same number. Yeah. That's always a plus. Yeah, but yeah, it was a good trip. It was what I like to refer to as a primer for our Arctic voyage next year. So I knew the ice was going to be a challenge, but it's like anything in life. You don't know until you're in it. Time is different. The way you make decisions is different. The way you plan contingency plans is different. You're thinking even further ahead than you would in a normal forecast, because you're trying to imagine if the wind shifts, when it shifts, what the ice field's going to do. It'll be a little different going to Greenland. We won't be kind of punching up into this ice field. We'll be going east of it where we'll be opening up. But once we're in Greenland, we'll be back in
How long
plenty of
time
ice.
we got?
About 6 weeks underway. Yeah. The ice really doesn't start receding in like Belle Isle straight up until second, third week of June. But we were kind of plagued with northeasterly winds, more predominant than normal, and that just kept the ice field in. So it really never came around to the southwest until we basically turned around. I made the mistake of looking at the ice charts as we were headed south, and I'm like, oh, we could have gone, but it was smart to turn around, and you know that's just as important as trying to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, is making a safe decision. And we were pretty relieved to be out of the ice. You know, it's a lot of motoring and a lot of time and fog and just being totally alert. And but I got the bug for sure. I wasn't sure how I was really going to feel about it, but once I was out there, I said I want to keep going north, keep going north. I understand the feeling now, and I understand why Noah was so obsessed and kept going back and continued to go back after he reacquired the vessel after World War II, taking students, and their whole mission was to see what they could learn. And that's our mission today. There's so many different things that a vessel like Bowdoin offers, new experiences, the attention to detail and the seamanship that a boat like Bowdoin demands. Some of these students are going to the foreign country for the first time. They're seeing what that is like in clearing customs and dealing with money exchanges and things like that. But facing fears, getting out of your comfort zone in a calculated way, and staying out of your comfort zone for a duration of time is all triumphant. And I think we saw a lot of breakthroughs on this voyage, and we had a great crew from the start. We had a good team. We didn't deal with any drama. I know everybody wants to hear the drama, but everybody was a tight unit, and just became more so as we proceeded through our voyage. But we have a little bit of time left. You guys have anything you'd like to add? Landon was collecting water samples along the way, so we're assisting in the microplastics library that we're doing here at Maine Maritime Academy, and so that was pretty cool. So periodically the voyage, we very strategically captured jars of water, and we'll see what we find in them.
Share the process for that.
Yeah, come on up.
Not much of a process.
All right, so the first couple water samples we took, we attached a jar to a boat hook, and we kind of just swung the boat hook back and forth in the water until the jar was full. And that didn't work quite as well as our later method, which we upgraded to a constrictor hitch or constrictor knot. And we tied that around the jar, and we kind of swung it around and got some samples. So yeah.
Yeah.
What's it? Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
Did you also look at water temperature, and in previous trips, did you notice any change in the water temperature?
So I didn't look at water temperature in previous trips, but we did take water temperature. I think the coldest we got was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. That was when we were in pretty heavy ice. We also took salinity, and just weather conditions, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the coldest day we had was about 37 degrees. So we had a couple pretty cold days, but all in all, I don't think anybody was terribly uncomfortable. We had a stove. Well, I had a stove in the aft cabin. We did find some wood along the way too, but you know, there's a lot of cooking going on aboard, a lot of people in a tight area, so it stays relatively warm. Heat is something we are considering for the Arctic very seriously. So
tell us a little bit about the trip to the Arctic. What's going to happen? When are you leaving?
So it's going to be about the same time frame. So first week of June we'll depart. I'm working with Andy Chase pretty closely. Actually, I did want to mention that too. Andy's been generous enough to actually assist in this process, and he went ahead. I think you left this about the same time we were leaving in June.
4th.
Yeah, and we left June 6th, and we went to Greenland to start laying some groundwork and making connections and talking to local officials, schools, museums, so we can start connecting some dots here and begin the planning process. So we'll start making some announcements here in November about the overall plan and more specific on dates, but we're actually we're finishing our fall sailing season now and lightly getting into the planning, but a lot of research in equipment and small upgrades that we're going to make, pieces of communications equipment and electronics that we're researching. So we're doing a lot of that, and then we'll start laying the actual route and planning that. But I have a lot of great previous itineraries from Rick, Andy that I refer to, and it's a great starting point to build off of. And that's basically what I did in this last trip as well. A lot of places in between. I just marked probably over 100 places on the charts as options that I knew a vessel of our draft to get into as places I might want to see, but also places I could duck out of. The cruising guides are great, but you have to keep in mind there are a lot of 45 smaller vessels, and the sailing directions don't get into much detail as far as the in-betweens. So there'll be some of that too. What do we want to see? We want to see a glacier, of course. We want to see wildlife. We will see the ice. That's a given, but yeah, we follow it closely. We have an Iridium tracker, which is a really cool thing. So Iridium is a satellite network that'll work in the Arctic Circle, but we can also two-way communicate through it. So our blog updates will be fairly regular, and you can go on the app or go on the website and follow boat and see where we are. And it updates every 10 minutes. So it's pretty cool. I think there's one more.
Was the quantity of ice and its location and its extent in any way unusual? Was it something you were not expecting? What I'm alluding to is climate change causing a lot more calving of glaciers so that the debris fields?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. I mean, there's just a lot of broken up melting ice that's in the water. What was unusual, and the local said, one of them said, I haven't seen this in 6 years, these northerly winds that we were having. But we expected it because we were seeing it on the charts, but we were also expecting a change in the weather that would start causing the ice to recede. And so, yeah, a bit unusual in that way. Yeah.
Let me just point out that the way the currents run there on the west coast of Greenland, the current is flowing north. And so anything that calves in Greenland goes north and then turns around and comes down with the Labrador current on the Labrador side. So although this was sort of a warm-up trip for Alex to get used to the boat and get used to going up, he ended up in a lot more ice than he's going to see next year in Greenland.
Exactly.
And we were talking as he said, I went to Greenland, I flew to Greenland on June 4th, and we were communicating. And about the first conversation we had, you should have come to Greenland, because I went from Nuuk, which is the capital, all the way up to Ilulissat, which is a couple 100 miles north of the Arctic Circle. And I didn't see any icebergs at all until I got to Ilulissat. And that's almost 70 degrees north, because all of that ice is going up and then coming down the other side. So the icebergs that come out into the North Atlantic have actually been underway for probably a couple of years already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I did seriously consider that for a moment heading across. There was a vessel ahead of us, like a little pilot cutter rigged vessel. Maybe Intrepid was the name. But anyways, they were trying to go Northwest Passage this year, and they just decided, well, we can't go north in Labrador anymore, so we'll go over to Greenland. That's what they did. They shot east, and they might have come back later. But yeah, it was seriously considered there for a minute, but I would have been late, I think. But yeah, like Andy said, we're going to be staying well east of that main ice field. And when I'm saying we saw new and old ice, we're seeing a lot of fast ice, which occurs, it starts really in December, freezing up heavily. And that Labrador Sea pretty much freezes over, and you get a lot of the new ice, and the snow lands, melts, turns into ice, but all kind of between and chopped up, and what's getting all tied together through that new ice is the old ice, and that could be 1,000 years old, some of it. I mean, it's old ice, and like Andy said, it's been underway for a long time, just circling in those currents. And another cool thing was when we were in Newfoundland, they said that's where people go in Twillingate specifically. They go there to see the big icebergs that are coming from Greenland. but they hadn't had a year like this in a long time. They said they don't always get those big icebergs all the time. So yeah, some changes to factor in, to watch, to make note of. Yeah, we're interested to see the differences between this year and next year.
How do you select your crew?
It's a long interview process. Yeah. The thing about this industry, a lot of it's word of mouth. You can get a pretty good idea. You might have sailed with them already. You get a pretty good idea about somebody through the network. And then there's an extensive interview process that we do here at Maine Maritime Academy. And the application process is, all on the website, and you can post it on Facebook and social media as well. Not always an easy process. Yeah. And people come out of the woodwork for this stuff too, so.
Primarily MMA students.
The crew, yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm referring to so we have licensed mates that we hire outside of the academy, and then the student crew who sign up. This year we just got the right amount that signed up. Next year, I think we're gonna have to be a little bit more, probably do an essay. Keep it. There's a lot of people that put a lot of time into Bowdoin too, with the student group club. So we'll see. Yeah, to be determined.
We have some questions on Zoom.
Yeah.
So first we have Tyler saying, thank you all for doing this. Great to see you. I have so many wonderful memories from sailing with you all. What was some crew's favorite places? Mhm. Hop up to the mic.
Mine was probably Battle Harbor. Yeah, a couple for Battle Harbor. Like, what about you? Yeah, Hawks Harbor, the abandoned whaling village. Yes, pretty surreal. A false bear encounter there.
Yeah.
Kind of a funny situation. We were coming up a hill. We had two shore parties going. We had one that went off the north, and we were kind of going off to the west. And we're coming up on this berm, and they're screaming at us because the radio, they're not getting through to us on the radio. Bear, there's a bear, they're screaming. And I'm like, my first thought is, we're doing this, and there's a polar bear on the other side. And they're freaking out. And I start yelling, what color is it? And I said, black. And I said, oh, okay. So we started back up the hill. And it was a mother and cub way off in the distance, but it was a pretty comical moment. What else for favorite ports?
I mean, St. John's was.
Yeah, St. John's. It's like a mini Halifax. It's really cool. A lot of history there. So much history in Newfoundland Maritime, and significant to the U.S. as well. Brigus, yeah, where the famous ice pilot Bob Bartlett was from, who Macmillan sailed with. That was kind of fun because we got to go to the Bartlett family's traditional dock where they fished out of and had their boats. We sent a picture to the Ernestine Morrissey saying, wish you were here. Fast Maritimes recently acquired tall ship that Bob Bartlett was taking into the Arctic for exploration purposes as well.
And I mean, we can't, honorable mention to Cartwright. Those lovely people gave us that nice dinner, kind of a send off before we left, in Cartwright at the
little, a little restaurant there. Yeah, we always had people at the dock waiting for us to see who we were, to meet us, but they wanted to offer us something, a car, a meal, gloves. I mean, everybody was just so incredibly friendly, and that again was part of the draw to keep going and checking out these communities. Are there any more?
Yeah. How many of this year's crew, besides Captain Alex, will take the voyage next year?
No comment. Well, it's the program's the CR 214 program, and it can be one of their 3 co-ops. So the students have to ship out on various vessels. They have to get a certain amount of tonnage. So usually once they do one on Bowdoin, it's hard for them to do another one. So it's usually a fresh batch of students, which is also a really special part of the program and the BO program specifically at Maine Maritime. But we take all majors. And into ocean studies, we had another ocean studies a student, Lily, on board. So yeah.
Questions from
That's all. Okay. Any more questions? Anything you guys would like to add?
Come sail with us.
Yeah, next week.
We're all impressed.
Thank you.